Everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm very happy to see some known faces here. Hi, Edna. It's great to see you. We're just gonna wait for a couple of more people to join and we start. Um, my name is Nassim. I am a program officer at the IUCN Academy. In behalf of the Academy, I would like to thank you for spending your hour with us today. I hope that you will like it, and I hope you will enjoy the hour together. Before starting, I also would like to, for those that don't know, tell you a couple of words about the Academy. So the Academy, it's the capacity building initiative of IUCN that started in 2021, and we develop many learning initiatives, such as this one that you will discover a little bit more today, called the Professional Certificate on Nature for Cities. And I'm going to start sharing my screen just to show you some slides. So before starting, today, what we do in this webinar is a little bit of a different webinar. So it's actually, let's call it a simulation of how is it a learning experience of a professional certificate at the Academy. And this one is on Nature for Cities. So I wanted before just to give you a small glimpse on the course for those that are not aware. And afterwards, we're going to have a poll. We're going to have the course director of the course speaking a little bit more about the topic, and some breakout groups discussions to really get to networking and connecting with each other, which is one of the outcomes of this course. So I'm not going to go through all of the points in this slide here because we have better ways to use our time. But I want just to tell you we have the course will start on the 5th of February, so the Professional Certificate on Nature for Cities, and it goes for 5 weeks. What makes it special is that you're not learning alone, you're learning together with many people, including the course director. So the idea is that you will have access to self-paced online models, but along with this, you will also meet once a week myself and Russell for 2 hours to go through different topics of cities and nature. As a way to evaluate also your knowledge, there are 2 types of assessments. We have an individual and a group assignment to ensure that at the end you really manage to acquire this knowledge. You will discover more during the 1 hour journey today, but during this course, you will get to one of the outcomes as put in this slide here is to be able to apply the IUCN Urban Nature Indexes, which is a framework that can help you to measure a city's ecological health. You will also learn how to use other practical tools that can help you to assess and monitor urban biodiversity. Learn from a lot of case studies. Experiencing today is connecting with expert and peers in your field. We really want you to feel like you're not alone, and after today, but in general after the course, you are able to have this network of experts that can support each other in improving the biodiversity in cities. I would like to stop sharing my screen, and like this you can see Russell. So this webinar will not be led by me. The webinar will be led by Russell, which is the course director. But before starting that, I would like to launch quick poll. We would like to get some answers from you guys. So it will show up in your screen, and we will give you a minute or so to just vote. There is no right or wrong or anything. We just want to know a little bit more. Perfect. I see 9 of you, 10, 11 already voted. So we're going to wait a little bit more just so a couple of more people can vote. And I know you are curious about the answers that others are putting, but we're not going to show this yet. We'll come back to it later with Russell. So like this, you can pay attention to the rest of the content. Okay, I'll let it just a little bit more. Okay, I think we can go to the next part. Thank you all. Super. So, as I say, the webinar will be led by Russell. So I'm going to give the floor to Russell and I will share my screen again. Would you like me to share the screen already, Russell, or you would like to say some words first?
Well, maybe just firstly to say thank you everyone for joining. It's a pleasure to be here and to interact with all of you. For me personally, this is a great passion of mine, nature and cities. I spent most of my career working in this field and also teaching and learning because I often learn a lot from the participants. So it's very much a sort of two-way exchange of knowledge. But I have some slides which I can talk to now, if you'd be so kind as to share them, Nassim. And perhaps you could also give me control of the slides. I also have a little dog, Bessie, who's been sleeping very quietly in the background, but whenever I enter a meeting, she decides to pipe up and start barking. She does occasionally make a cameo appearance in the course itself, so apologies in advance if she disrupts us. Okay, so let's start with some simple definitions. Firstly, what is nature? Now, it may seem obvious, but it's often misunderstood. In our view, nature is really the collective phenomena of the physical world, and that includes plants, animals, fungi, ecosystems, landscapes, seascapes, all the collective features and products of the earth, excluding, and very importantly, excluding us, humans, and our creations, which of course by extension includes cities. Now, nature sustains us. It provides us with food, fiber, medicine, water. It cleans the air. It cycles nutrients. It sequesters carbon. And it provides opportunities for recreation and cultural and spiritual fulfillment. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. I have control. I do indeed.
Yes.
Thank you. And yet nature is in peril. 3/4 of the Earth's land surface has been significantly altered by humans, and it's estimated that since 1970 we've lost about approximately 73% of wildlife populations, and as much as as many as 1 million plants or species of plants and animals are thought to be at risk of extinction. And you don't need to look far to see the evidence. You can see it at your local fishmonger with the changing fish. You can notice it in the dwindling dawn chorus of birds. You can see in the absence of flying insects. Here we are. So let us just turn one back, sorry. The next question is, what are cities? Well, cities are the biggest things we've ever built. There are many different technical definitions, but without going too much into the detail, understand them as densely populated areas with at least 50,000 inhabitants. Today, well over half of us reside in cities, and it's estimated that by 2050, the urban population will absorb or will grow by an extra 2 billion, increasing the global urban population to over 2/3 or around 68%. So urbanization shows no sign of slowing. And there are an astonishing 34 megacities today. Greater Tokyo alone has more inhabitants than the entire population of Canada. So are cities part of nature? Some say yes, some say no. some leading academics have questioned whether we ourselves might just be ecosystem engineers, like beavers, ants, termites, or even corals that also modify their environment. But the trouble with that argument is that whilst other species have been maintaining their roles at stably modest levels for millions of years, the scale of human ecosystem engineering has grown by orders of magnitude in just a few thousand years. And notwithstanding some very rare exceptions, there's also a certain permanence and a certain permanence about our cities that sets them apart from the typical termite mound. Sorry, I'm just moving on. Here we are. And then why is this important? Well, firstly, because urbanization brings about dramatic changes in the environment, including light, precipitation, humidity, temperature, prey, predation, parasitism, competition, substrate. And as a result, it's extremely disruptive for species and their habitats. It's estimated that in the 3 decades between 2000 and 2030, an area larger than Italy will be urbanized. So this is a major global phenomenon. And while some species can adapt and survive, many unfortunately are either extirpated or displaced. And what is very interesting is that the most rapid urbanization is occurring in areas of high ecological value, particularly in countries of the global south, which may have limited capacity to develop sustainably. And unplanned or informal urbanization tends to exacerbate social inequities and also corrode natural capital and increase climate and disaster risks. Protected areas, especially strictly protected areas, are feeling the heat. It's estimated that by 2030, some 40% of strictly protected areas, these are the most important protected areas, will lie within just 50 kilometers of a city. And that's close enough to feel the effects of, air, light, noise, pollution, water pollution, but also direct effects like trampling, poaching, arson, and vandalism. And we know that the prevailing forms and patterns of urbanization are weakening human nature connections and exacerbating social inequities. Now, this matters because we know exposure to nature renders significant mental and physical health benefits. It also inspires compassion and care for the natural world. So for many people, their first and only form of contact with nature is in cities. That's why it's very important we ensure it's good quality nature and readily accessible. Additionally, cities are centers of consumption and production. They occupy just a few percent of the Earth's land surface, and yet they have ecological footprints that are orders of magnitude larger. They can touch even the remotest remnants of wilderness. Cities are accounting for some 75% of natural resource consumption and as much as 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. And cities are also centers of political, financial, and social capital. So they are the hotbeds of innovation. They are the engines of the economy, and they must and can lead the transition to a sustainable future. We also know that urban systems, as I said earlier, they're heavily exposed to climate and disaster risks. Now, fortunately, we can receive a helping hand from Mother Nature. So when we look at, I'll give you some examples now. Nature-based solutions. This is a term I'm sure you've come across, but you can plant street trees to mop up air pollutants, to dampen noise, to cool the air. You can restore marshes and mangroves to shield coastal communities against storm surges. And you can plant rain gardens and restore catchments to absorb storm flow and reduce flood risk. So these are some of the ways in which we can turn to nature to help increase the resilience, livability, and sustainability of our cities. Now, what is clear is that depending on how they are designed, built, governed, and managed, cities have the profound potential to either exacerbate or ameliorate the global climate and ecological emergency. How then can cities and nature be reconciled? And how can we reimagine our cities as bastions of a truly ecological civilization. And this brings us to the next question, which is how can you play a role in helping to realize this vision? Nasim, please.
Yes, thank you, Russell. Really, really interesting. We thought that now, after what Russell has gave you some insights and some food for thought, we could go into breakout groups and it would be random with this question, which is from your experience, what does it take to shape greener, more resilient and biodiverse urban environments? What we will do to facilitate things is that we thought the best way, like Russell is highlighting, the best way to write your outcomes will be via Mentimeter. So there is the QR code if you want to scan with your phone. There is the link and the code if you want to access with your computer. And please write there anything that you discuss. And then when we come back in 10 minutes, we will discuss this together with Russell and understand what's next and what do we do to achieve that. So I will stop sharing my screen and my colleague is going to launch the breakout rooms in a second. Hello, everyone. Little by little, waiting for everyone to join back. We hope you had very interesting discussions, even if it was, 10 minutes it's not maybe enough to have a thorough discussion, but at least to start in the topic. What we are going to do, and I'm giving the word to Russell again, is I'm going to share my screen with the Mentimeter so we can all together see the responses. There we go. So Russell, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nasim, and thanks to everyone who contributed. Actually, engaging with your peers is an important part of the learning journey. And this will very much be the case in the course itself. We do have live sessions where we can challenge one another. We can share our personal experiences. Usually it's a very global cohort of students. And we can meet with guest lecturers, international experts, and city officials. So engagement is a really important part of it, learning from one another. Looking at these comments, I was struck by how many of you mentioned community involvement, almost deliberative democracy. And it's very true that in most surveys on the topic, people often want more nature than they currently have in their cities. I know WWF Scotland conducted such a survey some years ago, and it was found that the majority of urban Scots wanted to have more nature in their neighbourhoods. But for some reason, they weren't getting that. And so there was a disconnect between what people want and what people were getting. And what we've seen is that with participatory planning, with participatory and deliberative democracy, we can see more ecological forms and patterns of urbanization emerge. One city that springs to mind is, I think it's Porto Alegre in Brazil, where they've had participatory budgeting for many years, which has resulted in a massive transfer of budget towards urban greening, but also towards the poorest neighborhoods. And of course, Reykjavik, where the Better Reykjavik program plays a role in providing citizens with an opportunity to propose concrete ideas for improving their city. And often these are green infrastructure ideas. I also noticed that urban planning came up a lot. In my view, far too many urban planners and architects and engineers, the people who are really designing our collective urban future, far too many of them know far too little about ecology. And if we concede that cities are fundamentally ecosystems, then we need to increase ecological literacy in the institutions where the engineers and architects of the future are learning. And that's why this course has indeed been created and why we're targeting not just conservationists, but people from all sectors who can play a role in shaping our urban future. I also saw a comment about fragmentation and connectivity. This is, of course, one of the tenets of conservation. We might describe the three tenets as being nativeness or native species, structural diversity, and connectivity. These are the three sort of underlying principles of good urban conservation. Okay, there are other factors to take into account, like management practices and governance, and of course, the size of habitats is also important, patch size. But connectivity is really central. And in cities where green spaces do tend to be very isolated and fragmented, we've seen that urban corridors, greenways, even ecological stepping stones can greatly enhance the biodiversity of habitat patches. What else do we have here? Building local capacity. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is really critical. The good news is that we have seen, thanks to many organizations in this field who have been actively working to advance the conservation agenda, we've seen a sea change, actually, in attitudes of local governments. Certainly in the 2 decades that I've been working with cities, it's remarkable how they've transitioned from being almost obsessive with concrete traditional infrastructure to really embracing nature-based solutions. And it's because they're cost effective and they work. The evidence is clear, but they're also multifunctional and they generate an array of potent benefits. I didn't see anything on protected areas, but that's another important part. With regards to urban planning, tend to occur in areas of high ecological value, so floodplains and coastal areas, which are often where other species like to reside as well. So we do need to look at ways to integrate biodiversity into the urban fabric. Also interesting was to see the number of comments on circular economy and minimizing waste, including plastics. That's a key part. When we think of nature, it's not just birds, bees, and butterflies. No, nature is very broad, very, very broad. And if we really want to create sustainable cities that exist in harmony with the entire urban metabolism, and there are many metaphors that we use to actually help visualize this. You might have heard of sponge cities, which absorb rainwater by way of their green infrastructure and thereby reduce flood risk. This is really a Chinese concept that has been popularized globally. You might also have heard of cities as artificial reefs. So in the marine world, often we create artificial reefs to increase productivity. You can do the same on land by making the most of the net increase in surface area with green roofs, green walls. I think there are just a few other comments I could speak to, but otherwise, I'd like to open the floor. Do any of you think that anything's missing here, or would you like to expound on any of your comments? There was one which I found quite interesting. I think someone from Suriname has indicated that gardening is an important part of greening cities. And I like this very much. We don't have to be sitting around waiting for governments to take action. We as members of the community, as active citizens, can take matters into our own hands. And if any of us have, anything from a windowsill and a window box to a big garden, we can make the most of that to promote local biodiversity. So Edinburgh is a really good example, actually. Edinburgh has these allotments where citizens are able to, I think, they don't pay necessarily for the land, but they can utilize land within the city to grow vegetables and flowers, and they're very, very popular. In fact, I think there are waiting lists, aren't there? 5 to 10 years. So you have to literally wait until someone disappears before you can acquire an allotment. They're incredibly popular. But yeah, food is interesting. I think there are many examples internationally I could point to. Famously Cuba, because it was sanctioned for so long. The city of Havana had to resort to urban agriculture to augment calorific intake. And so to this very day, I've never been, I would love to go, but apparently Havana has a thriving urban agriculture that contributes, I think it's about 30% of the food consumed within the city. So too in many African cities. It's amazing because so many of these cities in Africa, where I have spent most of my career, have grown so quickly. And these populations are comprised of people who have rural skills, farming skills. And so they're able to bring these skills into the city. And you notice it, there's a very agrarian economy still within these large sprawling African cities. And then Paris, of course, has done a great job. You may know that they have an organic food policy. I think it was under Mayor Hidalgo's leadership that Paris made it, I think, compulsory, obligatory for all schools, all public schools to cater to children with organic produce. Now, that must have a tremendous effect on biodiversity, both near and far. Any other comments? Would anyone like to share some personal anecdotes or experiences? I know we've got a very diverse group of participants here today, which is wonderful. No? Okay. No problem. If not, perhaps I had a list as well of actions or perhaps principles of action, which I often speak to. I won't go through all of them, but there were just one or two which I think might have been absent. Although I've seen that the list of comments is also increasing as I speak. So one of them was to foster pro-environmental attitudes grounded in environmental literacy. And I think that there's a lot that we can do to ensure that future generations retain a knowledge and an understanding of the natural world. And that's really key to increasing compassion to protect it. And it's quite alarming. And on the UK, I'm sure, Leigh, you would agree that many British children, unfortunately, don't play in nature anymore. I think it's about 10% of UK children play in nature, and fewer still are able to identify some very common species. So we've seen a sharp decline in ecological literacy. So I was just going to pick up on that. So on education and awareness raising, I think we have allies in the culture sector. You know, we have so many actors in literature. We have poets, artists, musicians, all manner of culture makers who can help to really move the needle and expand imaginations and drive a cultural shift, both in how we perceive nature and how we reimagine our cities. And there's a lot of goodwill out there as well. In fact, one of my good friends, David, he's a poet, a Zimbabwean poet, and he writes poems about trees, incidentally, which I can perhaps pop a link in the chat box later. Okay, so then let's move on. We've got a poll, I believe, unless there are any other comments. Okay, over to you, Nasim.
Well, I thought that now would be a good opportunity to show the results of the poll. And then like this, you can use this to debrief together with the Mentimeter outcomes. So I will share my screen. Just a second. So basically, these are the three questions that you had in the Zoom poll, and these are the different options. And highlighted in green are those that were more voted. So I leave it to you, Russell, now to
interpret these.
Together.
Okay, very interesting. Not necessarily the results I anticipated. So the main reason for being interested in the professional certificate, and I'm sure there are many. I mean, I for one love just learning. It's such a privilege to learn, and I would like to really emphasize that we don't necessarily teach. We provide the facilities to learn, and you really get out of this course what you put into it. If you engage, if you show up to the live sessions, if you make the most of the connections, because there will be some very interesting people on this course with whom you can form professional alliances, and starts within our cities. So many different reasons, but ultimately the most popular was to support climate resilience and biodiversity in cities, which of course can generate a whole range of benefits. And then the biggest challenge or the biggest barrier to building urban resilience in your city. Now that was found to be rapid urbanization and informal settlements. Very interesting. Urban sprawl is a topic we will cover in the course. And one thing that didn't come up actually in the previous comments on what it takes to create a greener, more resilient and biodiverse city is compact, integrated urban planning. Far too many cities are sprawling with low density development, infringing needlessly on the landscape, on precious habitats, but also displacing agricultural land. And so if we want to build a truly ecological civilization, I think we have to live closer to one another, right? Not necessarily cheek by jowl, but we need to live in far denser communities. And that does not mean giving up nature. we can still have high quality, biodiverse parks on our doorstep, but they have to be places of public luxury rather than private luxury. Now, the third question was, how would you describe your city's or your organization's current approach to urban resilience? No formal resilience strategy yet. And then early planning or pilot projects. So that suggests actually I was over optimistic with my initial assertion. But would anyone like to comment on these questions or perhaps add some nuance to the responses? Over to you, Nasim. I believe we have a few minutes left just to kind of wrap up and maybe share an overview of the course. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Russell, and thank you, everyone. We want to make sure you don't miss your next meeting or whatever. We know that these are busy days, starting of the year. Wanted to thank you all again. I would like to just share one last thing, which is the call to action, let's say. So if you are interested in joining the course, please scan the QR code. There you can find more information. The next steps will be we invite you to apply to the course on IUCN Academy, and then your application will be reviewed, and if accepted, you will be invited to join the program. I also put the program fees here in the slide, which you can also find in the course page. You will notice there are different types of fees, non-profit, for-profit organizations, whether you work for an IUCN member, you're a commission member, there are all types of different fees, and we hope we can see you there. I will stop sharing. And I appreciate, Russell and I appreciate your time, that you were here with us for the entire hour. And we hope that you enjoyed it. And during those 10 minutes, at least you got to do a little bit of networking, perhaps. And if anything, please contact us. You can always write IUCN Academy. You can always also reach out any of us on LinkedIn. We will be more than happy to connect the conversation with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day.